Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. I want to talk to you about the global economy. No. Don't go away. It's a forerunner of the mark of the beast. You know what the mark of the beast is? Got a growing movement over in Sweden. People are having microchips implanted into their hands to replace credit cards and cash. The microchip pioneer, a company called Johan Osterfund, or maybe that's the person's name, said tech will move into the body. Speaking to the New York Post, he says, I am sure of that. More than 4,000 citizens have opted to insert the chip, which is about the size of a grain of rice. The chip can also help monitor health and replace key cards for access into offices and buildings. This progressive country hopes the chips catch on and thereby eliminate the need for cash. You do realize cash is going away. The government just threw about $600 million worth of cash. Oh no, I guess it was the what is that money, people? Supposedly separate from the government. Throw all this $600 million into the fund because we were running out of cash. The government is pulling cash out of the system because it's not being used that much. And then something happens, we got to have the cash to cover whatever. Osterfund, who also owns something called Biohacks International, has claimed that the technology is completely safe for the users. But there are always people who are concerned, not about infection, but about privacy. The problem is, who will own this data? Do I get a letter from my insurance company saying premiums are going up even before I know I'm ill? If I use the chip to buy lunch, go to the gym, go to work out, will someone have all of this information about me? Will they store it somewhere? Is it safe? Will they know when I'm home, when I'm not? People have shown they're happy to give up privacy for convenience. The chip is very convenient. So could we accept our data being shared widely before we know what the risks are? For some pastors and end times theologians, the microchip is a concerning sign of the Antichrist. Now we'll talk about that later in the show. There's also an issue with global warming. Some 57% of American teenagers say they fear climate change. 52% are angry about it. This according to a Washington Post Kaiser Foundation survey. Teenagers read newspapers. They watch the news on television, right? Wrong. They get their news from school. They get it off their phones. Short propaganda flashes aimed at firing up the least educated in our society. The Post said a majority of respondents, many of whom will reach voting age in 2020, are motivated to channel their anxieties into activism. That's something that's indigenous to young people. Sam Riley, who's 17 years old, says it's terrible. It's hardly ever brought up at my school. And that's terrible? Yeah, global warming is political propaganda. It doesn't belong in the school. He said that nearly everything he knows about climate change has come from reading the news or searching the internet. That's personally shocking to me. He's in Boston. They're not talking about it in his school. I'm given the understanding that schools are hot to trot with this, and it's all over the place. A Maryland teenager, Graham, said climate change is the greatest threat to life as we know it, and humanity as we know it. He went on to say, when you're facing something like that and you're 16 years old and your mom's yelling at you and you have classes and on top of that everybody's going to die, it's easy to let fear overtake you. Did you hear that? Mom's yelling at you. You're having classes. People are telling you you're going to die. And all that's lumped into one category. A poll found about 1 in 4 teens have participated in a walkout, attended a rally, or written a public official to express their views on global warming. Teenagers are an informed group, right? Wrong. Makes you wonder if they've heard about a new, more accurate system to assess surface temperatures established in 2005 by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. You've heard of NOAA? This is the one that indicates there has been no warming in the United States over the past 14 years. Also, that raw temperature readings at pre-existing stations indicate temperatures are the same now as they were 80 years ago. Of course, that news doesn't stop NBC from sending 2 of their premier celebrities to Alaska, one in the west, one in the east. I guess one went to Alaska, one went to Greenland. I don't know. To highlight the plight of global warming. They did this all week long. And they noted that the ice flows, the stuff is receding. It's getting warmer. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. The Pope weighed in this week on global education. The Daily Wire is reporting a plan in which the Pope is inviting representatives of multiple religions, international groups, and others to sign a global pact of education. He wants to, quote, hand on to younger generations a united and fraternal common home. He quotes Bill Clinton in saying it takes a village to raise children. In a video, Pope Francis said, quote, a global educational pact is needed to educate us in universal solidarity and a new humanism. What does that mean? LifeSite News reported, quote, a Vatican-backed website launched to promote the pact reported, quote, educating young people in fraternity, in learning to overcome divisions and conflicts, promote hospitality, justice, and peace. I got that at home when I was 8 years old. The Pope has invited everyone who cares about the education of the young generation to sign this global pact, a pact to create a global change of mentality through education. He said this will result in men and women who are open, responsible, prepared to listen, dialogue, and reflect with others, and are capable of weaving relationships with families between generations and with civil society. All of this will create a new humanism. Plans are for a convention of sorts to happen on May 24th next year, 2020. He said an alliance is required between the earth's inhabitants and our common home, which we are bound to care for and respect. An alliance that generates peace, justice, and hospitality among all peoples of the human family, as well as dialogue between religions. Did you see that? A crisis created that will unite people and religions around what? The Pope. That's the subtext. I know I'm cynical. Trust me. Watch it. A Russian religious group in central Russia took to the skies in small airplanes to save citizens from drunkenness and fornication. This according to a Russian local media outlet. Once the planes reached an altitude of 200 to 300 meters, about 800 feet in the air, the blessings began. They then held a prayer service before pouring the holy water out of the plane's open door. The water was tipped out from a large chalice in an attempt to heal those suffering from alcoholism and drug addiction. A married couple that claims the husband was miraculously cured of alcoholism was also on the flight. One of the officiants said the ritual is designed to stop the use of alcohol, drugs, and to stop fornication. Any disease is from a virus, and a virus is a demon, he said. Therefore, any disease is primarily a spiritual disease. These are Russians. Apparently they're not up into the 21st century yet. Wait a minute. We knew all this was bunk in the 20th century. Oh, did I mention they were Russian Orthodox priests? On September 11th, Sobriety Day, an unofficial Russian holiday, the priests carried 70 liters, 18 gallons of holy water into the aircraft. This is the Russian form of Catholicism. It's a little rough around the edges. In his book, Unnatural Causes, British forensic pathologist Dr. Richard Sep't observes how over the years the dead bodies he examines have changed. One of the most notable is the rapid increase in body fat. He says, quote, unless a patient is homeless or has died of cancer or is so old and poor they could not eat, few are the same shape as the dead in the 1980s when I started practicing. Looking back at forensic photos from that era, I am astonished at how thinness was then the norm. Fast forward just 3 decades and obesity levels are now rising at such a rate that one expert says the time bomb has exploded for our health services. Consequently, the National Health Service is reportedly bracing itself for soaring levels of cancer, type 2 diabetes, and heart and liver disease. In the U.S., talk show host Bill Maher observed that in August 53 Americans died from mass shootings. And the world was stunned. The United States, here, we just saw this as terrible. Well, in the same time period, 40,000 people died of obesity, directly from obesity. It's a shocking statistic. And it's indisputable that it should be highlighted and widely debated. Dr. Sep't said it's not just about what people eat, it's about why they overeat. Why? Well, because they can afford the food, and they have little or no self-restraint. The tiny South Pacific island of Nauru is now classed as the most obese nation in the world. 61% of its just over 10,000 population have a body mass indicator higher than 30. According to one report, this is possibly attributed to Western settlers who taught them to fry their food and import less healthy food, abandoning their traditional cultivation, preparation, and preserving skills. And again, we call all of this progress. But we do the same with money. Millennials carry an average of $27,900 in debt, not including mortgages, and all of that according to new data released by Northwestern Mutual. They're called Generation Z, the oldest of whom are now 22 years old, and they have an average debt of $14,700. Cars, education, and what? Well, millennials' main source of debt is credit card bills. Generation Z's is student loans. In a previous poll by creditcards.com, 40% of millennials said the top reason they carried a card or card balance was because daily expenses like groceries, childcare, utilities were the unexpected emergencies that popped up, just like medical bills and car repairs. 20% of their debt was for stuff they should be paying for, And the unexpected things should be paid off as quickly as possible. The majority use credit for daily essentials. Bono said discretionary expenses such as vacations and eating meals also contribute to credit card debt. Pew Research Center said in a report earlier this year, the share of young adult households with any student debt doubled from 1998, that's when Gen Xers were about 20 to 35 years of age, to 2016 when millennials were that age. In addition, the median amount of debt was nearly 50% greater for millennials with outstanding student debt at $19,000 than for Gen X debt holders when they were the same age at $12,800. Last year, millennials had a median household income of about $71,400, that according to Pew Research. But thanks to their debt, their savings lag behind what older generations had in the bank at the same age. The median net worth of millennial households is about $12,500 in 2016, compared with $20,700 for households headed by boomers at the same age in 1983. Each generation since the greatest generation has continued to spend more than they earn, all the while thinking it will work out eventually. When? Well, when mom and dad die and pass along their inheritance. But if your parents are Gen Zs, they ain't gonna be any. It's called progress.